Hey guys, Zephyr here from Macro Insight. Thought I'd make another update regarding the crypto market. We'll have a quick overview of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and even a bit of insights into altcoins to see what we can expect and what's going on in the coming days or weeks. Might even look at some potential long setups and ways we can get involved in the market. So, a couple of days ago, we had the Jackson Hole event. We had Powell speaking, obviously some very bullish outcomes from that event, from that speech. We had a Bitcoin surge around 5% in a couple of hours. And, we've kind of playing this range. We can see that we have come back down to the middle of the range here. So now the goal is to try and position ourselves for further upside, or are we waiting for deeper? Is this just a lower high in the scheme of things? Are we actually going to be able to continue higher, push into new all-time high territories, or at least back into 120,000 on Bitcoin? So looking at it from the daily chart, again, our macro structure is extremely bullish. There is nothing to be worried about here. Our line of invalidations is around 107 to 105K. If we start closing below there on the weekly or the daily, that's when we can signal some signs of concern. Maybe we can start to get out of the market and reposition for lower, or we can analyze and see what's going on at that time. But at current times, we are still bullish. We are still looking for longs. We still want to be exposed, and we're still looking to get some risk on in some long positions. So we had a sweep of these lows last night. You can see here, this liquidity grab here is what fueled our move. You can say it was Powell, you can say it was the FOMC, you can say it was a Jackson Hole event, but from the chart's perspective, this was a technical level as well that provided a great clean long setup. We didn't take this one. We thought it was a bit too risky with a big demand block underneath, but we did take some long setups on LTC and Doge that you saw, since they showed a much better structure and much better invalidation for us. So after the pump, we've come back up all the way to 117,000, which actually happens to be our main point of interest. So 117,500 is kind of where we are seeing most of the volume. Your volume profile tools will show you that this is kind of the line in the sand. Below this, we are still technically bearish in the sense of we're not expecting upside continuation. This is a small inkling or a small sign that more upside is coming, but we're not fully bullish just yet until we get a close above 117,000 and maintain that. So we want to make sure that, it's a daily close, we stay above for a day or two, and then we can start looking for more risk on opportunities in the lower time frames to catch that move back up to all-time highs. But as we're currently standing, you can kind of look at this as a range potentially. We're ping-ponging up and down. So we're looking to see if BTC can establish some support in this region. Somewhere around this zone of 114,000, 115,000 would be a really logical place to look for some longs with some invalidations, around 113. And if we fail to hold here and we go back to range lows, I find it very likely for us to tap into that 110,000 to 108,000 zone. Since we've taken the liquidity from below, this should be our catalyst for higher. So if we do come back down to the range lows, I don't expect it to hold. We might get this triple tap right here, but the second we go under 111, that opens up the box down below. So that's our main zones we're looking for right now, but we're actually much more interested in ETH and altcoins, which we'll kind of cover right now as well, to give you a better idea of what to expect coming up. So, on Ethereum, we have an amazing daily structure. So I'll get rid of this picture right here, but you can see that this is much more bullish than Bitcoin. Bitcoin's now ranging and chopping, while Ethereum is just putting in higher highs and higher lows. So we want to be involved in Ethereum rather than Bitcoin if we're trading, but we're still using Bitcoin as an indicator to give us insights about the market. So the main things that we want to focus on here on Ethereum is a sustained close above all-time highs. If we can get something like this and, kind of like Bitcoin with 117,000, if we can stay above 4.9, 4.8K for a day or two, that's your risk on sign. That's all we're waiting for. These wicks and these small movements that are above all-time highs, yes, you can interpret them as bullish. We're taking liquidity, so there's less resistance to supply overhead when we go for it again. But the real risk on environment will only start once we get to close above that 4.9K zone, and we get to stay there for a couple of days. And that's where you'll really see your altcoins start to move, when you really get to see, 100%, 200%, 300% days happening on altcoins. But in the same respect, we're actually entering premium on Ethereum. So this is actually where you kind of want to be de-risking Ethereum and rotating that either into alts or setting aside some stables. If you're buying down below 2,500, back into the discount areas on Ethereum, that's where you want to kind of start de-risking and locking in some profits. A move from here up to 5.5, 5.8K, which is, where my next logical zone of resistance will be, is only 20%. And you've already got if you've bought around 2,000, 2,500, 100% gain. So locking in some gains here, either rotating them into altcoins that still haven't moved from their discount zones, that are showing some really nice high time frame structure, is the smart play here. Is exactly what we'd want to do as Ethereum approaches all-time highs. There is less reward left in Ethereum at this point compared to altcoins. Now, altcoins might not move, but the point is that you're positioning yourself in a probabilistic matter. So you want to make sure that you're positioned in altcoins that have high time frame structure that is bullish. You don't want to be positioned in coins that have been downtrending for 6 months already, hoping that they'll get 1,000% reversal so you can exit. You want to be in coins that have been able to maintain the high time frame structure. Things like Litecoin, things like Chainlink, things like Dogecoin, XRP. The market is showing you their hand on what is bullish and what's not. There is obviously clear interest, whether that be from whales, institutions, ETF inflows in these coins, that they want to keep pumping them. They want to keep their structure, and it's showing us that they want to keep going higher. Things like Celestial or some like Dog with Hat or meme coins, while they do have a chance to come back and do massive numbers, they are much less probabilistic to do so. And if they do, that's usually at the very tail end of the rotation cycle. So you could potentially have your Ethereum gains, which you have now, rotate them into something like XRP, Dogecoin, Chainlink. And after they pump, you can then rotate to those higher risk coins, because that's how the liquidity cycle of rotations work. So essentially for Ethereum, we're just looking for it to hold above the all-time highs to go full risk on. But the main zones of interest right now would be this area here from 4.4K to 4.2K. This is what we want to see hold. We do not want to go below here, otherwise that opens up below 4K, and that still keeps our high time frame structure intact. We just want to make sure that we stay above 3.3K and we don't get any closes here. Below some wicks, some manipulation is okay, but ideally would like to wait to get price action to hold here and then move into all-time highs. We could get another 1 or 2 months of chop going up and down. I wouldn't like that personally, but I think the highest probable chances here are a long setup on Ethereum. Something where, we're entering at the start of this zone, covering just below it and aiming for about 5.5 to 5.8K. That's a 5-hour trade right there. I think this is a pretty safe setup that people can take, and something that's not too out of this world. We're only doing a 25%, 19% gain from current prices to get there. And it's very probable as well if we maintain this high time frame structure. But the main thing that's interesting me right now is Bitcoin dominance, showing us its hand. It's actually starting for the first time to enter a bearish market structure, and which means that risk on is coming back into the market. So hopefully it maintains this bearish market structure. But, since 14th of July, we've closed below the lows here. We can see that it's maintained its bearishness and it wants to keep going down, which is why Ethereum has been pumping, which is why some altcoins have done, a couple of 100% off the lows. Now, with Ethereum approaching its all-time high, we can expect the same. We can expect Ethereum to start breaking down and chopping sideways while it distributes, and altcoins moving even more into those premium prices where we can finally start to sell those bags that we've been buying at a discount for a couple of months. So Bitcoin dominance is showing its hand. We're seeing that it's breaking down. We're hopeful that it will stay the same way. The big zone here is 54%. A close below there would see some mania, but Ethereum is the best indicator right now. Another place I like to look is BTC against Total 3. So we can see that, Total 3 against BTC. So this is just essentially all altcoins outside of Ethereum and Bitcoin against Bitcoin. And on the daily structure, so on the macro view, this is a discount at range lows, and we like to be bullish at range lows. We don't like to be bullish at range highs or in premium. So discount is where we want to be bullish, and we're starting to see a nice reaction of one of our levels here. The even better thing that we're seeing is on the daily chart that we're actually starting to break some local market structure. So not only are we starting to hit the discount and big zones that we're interested in, we're starting to see Total 3, which is our altcoins, outperform Bitcoin. So not only is Ethereum now outperforming Bitcoin, but our altcoins are starting to do so as well, which is another great indicator that risk is coming back to the market, the liquidity is rotating, and is why we are really interested in positioning to altcoins right now. So the main thing to take away is maybe stay away from Bitcoin if you're buying spot, especially. I don't think there is enough risk to reward to keep buying Bitcoin. Ethereum as well. I think at this point, even if we do go to 10,000, that's a 2x. You can be looking at coins like Dogecoin, like LTC, like Chainlink that can give you easy 3, 4, 5x's in that same time span with a higher reward for around the same risk, because you're going to have the same invalidations in those coins. So it won't be a big difference in risk. Yes, it might come faster. Yes, it might be more volatile. Yes, it might be harder to stomach for you, but that's where the money is going to be made in the next coming months. And hopefully Q4 remains bullish. Who knows? Maybe we'll go into Q1. I'm personally looking at somewhere mid Q4 for us to see some pullbacks and some heavier retracements. But, depending on how the Fed pivots, depending on how liquidity transitions, we could go into Q1 as well. But the main thing that we want to have in place for our altcoins are set targets that we sell at. So right now, while you're not euphoric, while you're not head over heels with the gains, go to your favorite altcoins, do some technical analysis on them, and find zones where you're going to sell at. And when that time comes, you have to sell. Make a note to yourself. Be true to yourself. Don't hold them thinking, there is more liquidity coming. Saylor is buying billions of Bitcoin or whatever it is. Make sure you sell at those zones. Locking in some profits, 20, 30, 40% of your spot bags and trailing your stop losses. Having a clear invalidation saying, hey, you know what? If Chainlink, if Litecoin decides to drop 20 or 30% from here, I'm out. And yes, you might miss some further upside, but at least you've locked in profits and you're not going to lose that money and round trip it, which is better than 95% of crypto Twitter or investors in the crypto realm. So that's the key takeaways that we have and how we're looking to position. And we've shared some long setups on our website and our Twitter. So people that have been following that, 3 of our long setups that have hit have all been profitable. We've got a 100% win rate so far. So I think you'd be stupid not to get involved and try and at least capitalize on some of the upside that we're giving you.